Now, Germany's parliament has voted to support a bigger and more powerful bailout fund for Europe's struggling economies. For more now, we're joined by Europe correspondent Emma Alberici from London. Thanks so much for being there. The measure got through and it was a big margin, but it wasn't all plain sailing for Angela Merkel.
No, well, it involved a 3-hour debate while members of her coalition government, who are close allies of Angela Merkel, fought very hard to persuade the other MPs to come over the line. In fact, 10 of her coalition members voted against the measure. And this was really seen, as much as anything else, as a vote for or against her leadership. Because many had said that she dithered for too long and that this was too little, too late, that if they were going to be in the euro and be key members of the euro, because of course it's important to remember that they are the key contributors to any bailout fund, more than a third, actually more like 40% of the fund is German money, and if they were going to be that strong a participant, then they needed to act sooner.
Is this damaging for her then?
Yes, a little bit. It is said to be a little bit damaging, although she has managed to get this measure passed with quite a huge vote of confidence in the measure. But I think a lot of that has got more to do with fear, which is driving so many parliaments around Europe. They want to do whatever it takes to keep the fabric of the Eurozone together, because they can't even imagine the consequences of allowing it to be torn apart.
What do we derive from this then, and particularly the fact that some of her own governing coalition voted against her? Is this something like the first warning shot that these continuous bailouts just can't keep going on?
Indeed, the Social Democrats, the main opposition party in Germany, has warned the government that they won't be supporting any measure to, again, expand this bailout fund. But on the other hand, most observers are united in their calls for much more money to be given to this fund. In fact, the International Monetary Fund and those who attended the finance ministers' meeting in Washington last weekend did say that the fund needed to be increased to something more like $3 or $4 trillion, as opposed to where it is now at about $610 billion. So, of course, they can foresee that if Greece now is allowed to stumble a little, have a partial default, what does that mean then for the likes of Italy and Spain, which on their own would gobble up any amount in the order of 600 billion. They'd certainly need more like trillions to support them. So there's a lot of disquiet about where this leaves the Eurozone. It's a little fixed for the short term, bit of a band-aid measure, but going forward no one thinks this is the end of the story, because most observers tonight are saying that actually the restructuring of this, what it's called, is the European Financial Stability Facility, this fund that was only really created in May of last year. It was meant to be a stopgap kind of measure, a bit of a safety net, if you like. It's become something entirely different with this vote in the German parliament. It's become a mechanism that will allow a partial default in Greece, because it will be allowed now to underwrite banks that will be left exposed if Greece is allowed to default. And that's where everyone thinks the next step is going to be, that they will organise what they're calling an orderly default. In other words, one that can be managed, where they're there waiting to help rescue the banks that are exposed, the French banks, indeed the Italian banks, the British banks that have been giving loans out to the Greeks, indeed to the Portuguese, the Irish, the Spanish and the Italians.
Good to talk to you, Emma. Appreciate it.